Hello Booktube, my name is Linda Jo Martin, known on Booktube as the Book Lady. Today I am doing my June wrap-up and July TBR. So first I'll do a little life update. I haven't made a video in about 10 days, maybe a little bit more. A couple of things happened. Well, first of all, there was the plumbing, and then there was the bookcase. Obviously, I've got a bookcase behind me now. Let's talk about the plumbing. That's what came down first. The plumbing disaster happened in between the kitchen sink and the master bathroom sink. And it was totally clogged. When I emptied the kitchen sink, the water would run into the bathroom sink. It was just a mess. So I had to find a plumber, which I live in a very remote location in the middle of a forest. And there are a couple of men here who do plumbing. I finally got hold of one after a few days. And he showed up here and worked for 3 hours the first day and was not able to fix the disaster, the clog. So he had to come back the next day, and he worked another 3 or 4 hours trying to get to this clog. He was a very nice guy, though. I really liked the service that he provided, and it's fixed now. I'm thrilled to pieces. So the second thing that happened was the bookcase, which I ordered online, and it showed up on my porch in a box, unassembled, of course. And it was so heavy I had to bring in the big boards one at a time. I opened it outside and brought the boards inside one at a time because there was no way I was going to be able to pick it up. I don't even know how FedEx got it from the driveway to the back porch. I have no idea. I wish I had seen that, but it couldn't have been easy. So it took me, well, that day I got the boards out and I looked over the instructions. The next day I started putting it together, and it took me most of the day to put the bookcase together, and I was doing a lot of praying because it was not an easy task. Not for me, it wasn't. And finally got it together, obviously, and I tried to pick it up and it was too heavy. So I thought, oh no, am I going to have to ask my son to come over here and help me pick up this bookcase? Well, my son works full-time. He's got a YouTube channel here, but he also works full-time, and he's a very busy young man, and I don't like to ask him to come over to help me do things. But the next morning I prayed and prayed, and I guess the anticipation of picking it up was a lot worse than the actual thing, because after I prayed a lot, I went over and I picked that thing up, and it really wasn't as hard as I had anticipated. And I got it into place and put the books in it, and guess what? I don't even have enough books here to fill this thing. So hopefully, well, when I get my books from North Idaho, I don't know when that will be. I'm waiting for the coronavirus to dissipate a little bit more. When I get my things from North Idaho, I have a lot more books, and that will probably fill this bookcase, and who knows, I might need to buy another one. Hopefully not as big as this one, though. I didn't like putting that together. It just wasn't all that much fun. And I can't believe how winded I got just trying to put that together. It doesn't seem like I would, but I did. Okay, let's move on from there. I got the bookcase together. I'm very happy I have a place to put my books now, so I can get them out of boxes. And let's talk about June. In June, the first book that I read, because I just could not wait because it looked so wonderful, I read Midworld, which is the book that I read because Todd the librarian here on Booktube had recommended it so many times. I read it for Pop Sugar Reading Challenge, prompt number 10. Hold on, I'm going to get to that part. I'm looking at my phone. Prompt number 10. A book recommended by your favorite blog, vlog, podcast, or online book club. And I just figured Booktube is like an online book club, so I would just pick a favorite book from a booktuber, and the first thing that came to mind was Midworld because Todd had mentioned it so many times. I very much enjoyed that book. I would give it 5 stars. In fact, I think I did give it 5 stars over at Goodreads. Great book. Science fiction and really remarkable. wasn't very long, but it was very good. And so the next book that I read after that is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. And I only gave this one 3 stars. And the reason why, even though it was kind of well written, I just got so frustrated with the main character because she seemed so totally clueless and did things that made no sense. I thought she was being irrational despite being a nurse. She's a nurse, for goodness sakes. Nurses cannot be irrational. But in this situation, dealing with a vampire, that's sort of how it looked to me. I read that for a 2020 Pop Sugar Reading Challenge prompt. Wouldn't you know it? It's prompt number 4, a book about a book club. And this is like the second time I've ever read a vampire novel. The only other one I've ever read was Dracula, which I enjoyed. I liked Dracula a lot. This one I did not like as much, and there was a lot of tension in it at times that I did not appreciate. Too much tension is not good for me. It really isn't, because, I don't know, it just makes me nervous. And maybe some people like that, but anything with stress or being nervous or anxiety, I don't like. So, after that, I started to read, let's see, I've been reading, looking for it on my list. I Capture the Castle. In fact, I'm still reading this. There was a read-along last month, and it was supposed to last from the 14th to the 20th, and I never finished the third part. I'm still reading the third part. I'm kind of slow, reading maybe half a chapter a night right before I go to sleep. And so I have to say about this book, I really like it a lot. It is such a sweet story. There's nothing objectionable about the story, and how unusual is that in literature these days? But of course, this one was written back in the 1940s, and so I think maybe the audience was maybe younger, like teenagers, so there's just nothing bad in this novel. I like this novel a lot. It's just great. I would say the worst thing in the novel so far has something to do with fur coats, which, me being a vegetarian, I'm not into fur coats, but okay, that's not such a bad thing, is it? So moving on, I recommend I Capture the Castle. It is just exquisite in the world of novels. And I didn't get around to reading Grandma Gatewood's Walk, so that's going to be on my July reading list again. I did read some stories from the anthology I'm reading. It's called It's All in the Story, California. These are short stories that are written about the state of California. Some of them are futuristic, some of them are historic, and everything in between. And very much a delight to read. They're all about 10 pages long, so it doesn't take long to get through a story. And I guess part of what I like about it is that I've lived in California most of my life, and so I know the locations that it talks about and some of the situations. Like, there was one story about the Russians that used to live here prior to California becoming a state, and what it would have been like if the Russians had been the one to find the gold instead of the 49ers that came from back east. So I found that fascinating, and so many other stories, really good. I recommend that to anyone, especially if you love the state of California like I do. And so after that, well, I haven't finished that. I should say I'm still reading the short stories, but I've read quite a few of them at this point. The next book that I started, I had to have an audiobook because I always want to have one Kindle book, one audiobook, and one paperback going at a time, because I read them at different times in different situations. So the next audiobook I chose is The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. And this is for a Pop Sugar Reading Challenge prompt number 23, a book that won an award in 2019. Well, this book, The Calculating Stars, won the Nebula Award for the Best Novel in 2018. In 2019, it got the Locus Award for Best Novel, and the 2019 Hugo Award for Best Novel, and it was also a finalist for the 2019 Campbell Memorial Award. Anyhow, I'm reading it. It's pretty interesting. It's not post-apocalyptic completely, but similar, because it starts with a disaster and the main character is affected by the disaster and they are displaced, and everything that goes on after that. It's fascinating. It's science fiction. She is a pilot and she wants to become an astronaut, but the person in charge of the program will not accept her because she's a woman. But she really wants to be an astronaut, and the name of the series, there is a series, and this is the first book in the series. The name of the series is the Lady Astronaut series, so assuming that she's going to become an astronaut eventually is just part of the mystique of this novel, because right now she's not an astronaut, she's just a pilot. And calculating stars, the reason it's calculating is because she's like a math prodigy. She can figure out difficult mathematical equations in her head very quickly. Now let's talk about what I'm planning to read during the month of July. Right now I am still reading I Captured the Castle. I'm very close to the end of that one. And also The Calculating Stars is an audiobook, and I'm about halfway through it. After that, I'm going to be reading The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. I think I've got this one as an audiobook, and that's for Pop Sugar Reading Challenge prompt number 38, a book by or about a journalist. And the next book that I'll be reading is a paperback. It is Light on the Devils, Coming of Age on the Klamath. I'm reading that for Pop Sugar Reading Challenge prompt number 7, the first book you touch on a shelf with your eyes closed. And I did that. I reached out and touched a book on a shelf, and this is what it is. And it's a regional memoir taking place really close to where I live. The devils in the title of this book refer to 3 mountains that are not too far from where I live. So the third book that I'm hoping to get to during the month of July, it will be on Kindle. It is called Your Blue Is Not My Blue by Aspen Mattis. And the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge prompt is number 14, a book by an author with flora or fauna in their name. So those are all my reading plans for the month of July, and I will hopefully make more videos in the near future. Right now, it's like 10 days since I made one, and it's just because I had so much going on here, especially with the plumbing disaster. I just was not in the mood for a video, and I couldn't even take a shower, because I was afraid that it would overflow or wash my clothes or anything like that. So after I got through that, it took me a few days to recover, and then I had the bookcase to take care of, and okay, I'm back at Booktube. I'm here. Thanks for waiting around for my next video, as if anyone was really waiting around with bated breath, waiting for Linda to make a video. But I hopefully will be able to make more videos in the near future.